Welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome you all this afternoon to the meeting. First off, this is not being recorded. It is being recorded, but we aren't live. And we have not got electronic voting. If you do want to vote, if you do want to speak, you just put your hand up. Just the normal way today, which is great. I'll just go through, explain everything on the sheet. Health and safety requirements. If we do have an emergency, we will follow Sarah out of the room. Sarah, put your hand up. This is Sarah. So we'll just follow Sarah out if we do have an emergency, and she'll take us out calmly out of the building. The exits are, where are the exits? Just this way, the stairwell. The stairwell's there, and there's also a stairwell down that end of the building as well. We are being recorded, but it isn't live. It'll go up on the website later. We do ask you that if you are speaking, you do need to introduce yourself. So we have got speakers here today, so you do need to introduce yourself when you are speaking. For everybody that is speaking, then we do welcome our guests that are here today. So welcome those people that have come today. Okay, that's it. Let's get started. So welcome to the Play, Sport and Recreation meeting today on the 21st of October. I'll call for apologies. First off, we have got an apology. We don't have one from Councillor Petrinas, he's here, but we do have one from Councillor Finlay. And we do have one from Councillor Johnson for lateness. He will be back, and that's it. So I'd look to move those apologies, seconded by Councillor Meehan. We'll look to vote. All those in favour? Do it differently. Okay, thank you everyone. That's passed unanimously. I'll look to call for a motion for any additional items. Has anybody got anything else they'd like to add to the agenda? No. Item number 3 is declarations of interest. Thank you, Councillor Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I declare my interest for item 6, the deputation from WBSC Under 18 World Cup?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, no other declarations. The only thing I'd like to do is I would like to move item number 9. It will move further down the agenda. So that's the only thing I'd like to just change on the agenda. Otherwise, and the other thing is the deputation has just been moved slightly because the person that's presenting the deputation is coming from school. So that's been moved slightly until he gets here. Everything's just the same. So we'll first off move into public comment. And our first up for public comment is Warren Collett from the Manawatu Golf Club. And that is on page 7. Now, Warren, you have got, oh, sorry, Sarah. You've got 3 minutes. But we do have questions if people want to ask you questions. I thought it was 10, yeah, oh, sorry. The deputation, sorry. We've got 10 minutes. Sorry about that, Warren. So there isn't a timing system here, but Hannah will give you some signals. So when it gets to, she'll just go like this. When it gets to 7, she'll give you this hand signal. That'll be 7 minutes. And then when it gets to 10, she'll give you the 10 signal. It's our primitive way of giving you signals. You don't have to stand. If you want to stand, you can sit. It's entirely up to you, however you feel comfortable. So Warren, over to you.
Thank you, Annie. Technology, thank you. Thanks for the invite, and it's certainly a pleasure. I did have my sidekick at you and Westergaard coming, but he's pulled up. He's picked up a bug out of the weekend, so he's not here. So apologies from him. But first of all, thanks for the invite and the opportunity to host this event in the city. The concept came about by you and myself sitting down. We had the PGA for a couple of years, and we were lacking something on our calendar, so we wanted to come up with something different, something unique. So we came up with bringing a tournament together where both men and women were participating. They'd go head to head for a single prize. And that was the first time in golf tournaments in New Zealand, professional tournaments, where that happened. So It was the concept was 3 days of golf. It was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and the fourth day was a 6-hole sudden death match play. The event promoted women into golf, and the whole week we focused on getting women involved in our industry. It was, as I said, it was the first of our kind in New Zealand, and we classified it as an equal opportunity golf tournament in New Zealand. The achievements we got out of that, we ran some She Loves Golf sessions and some future golf sessions in conjunction with Orlando, even though Orlando to a degree is in opposition to us, but we wanted to get the interest out and about the region. So that was very successful for us. We had kids, and we also had mothers of children that wanted to participate as well. We ran a very successful business brunch in conjunction with Sport Manawatu as well, and with New Zealand Golf's assistance. We had 4 fantastic speakers, and that was very, very successful. That was on the Tuesday, and once again we were engaging people in the wider area. I mean, they came from. I mean, people that attended that brunch did come from as far as Wellington, and they did come from Taupo and Taranaki. So we were pretty happy to have people moving around the area. We were a pioneer, as I said, of this Charles Tour. This event forms part of the Charles Tour of New Zealand Golf events. And after that one event, all of the Charles Tour events in the future now are all inclusive. Both men and women do play against each other. On the Sunday, it was like the T20 of golf, as it is in cricket. There was about 3 matches going all on at once on the 18th hole. And it was exciting because people didn't really know where to look or how it was going to happen. We got very, very great reviews from the players. When you run an event like this, it's obviously new, and it had happened over in West Australia in Perth, and we picked the idea up from there. But being New Zealand, we thought there would be a little bit of conservatism, but the reports that we got back from the players was very good. The successes we had, we attracted a top-class field. We had a couple of Kiwis that were back home out of the States. We had a young guy that was heading to the States after this tournament, but got hung up in COVID, so he couldn't get away. In the final 24 makeup on the Sunday, we had 2 women that made the top 24, and one of those made the quarterfinals, and the other was knocked out in round 2. I think what has happened out of this, we've just had to watch the latest Charles Tour event out of Taranaki, and there was a young girl called Momoka Kubori. She's out of Rangiora. She plays out of there. She came second in the same inclusive event that we have started. So she was up there playing with the big boys, playing with the in the last group on Sunday. So this tournament has enabled her to grow in her golf as well. We had plenty of support from and testimonials from particularly our sponsors, and that was very pleasing to see as well. And this particular event, this format belongs to the Manawatu Golf Club. We don't want anyone else taking this concept off us. It's exciting, and we know that it will be a success in the future. Obviously, something like this, it's new for the city as well, and we think that's great for the city because although golf events aren't new, this concept is new. So we think that's good for us as well. Like any event, you certainly do have some challenges, and as I alluded to before, the first gender equality tournament in New Zealand. It was the first Super 6 event of its kind in New Zealand, and we weren't confident with the format, but the format proved to be very successful for us. So it was a learning curve. Golfers to accept playing with women, and there were some real challenges in that. There certainly was. I mean, and when it got down to Sunday and people were in a semi-final playing for money, there was the male chauvinist trick played on some women. There was some tears. There were some sanctions afterwards as well, which I was pleased to see New Zealand Golf. And one of our senior professionals in New Zealand, he took a bit of a hiding. He was seen getting in a taxi pretty quick, so he left. But he will be back. He subsequently sent us a lovely testimonial on the event, so he's had time to think about what he did and say. So it was good. Selling the concept to our club members and sponsors. I mean, sponsorship is always a difficult thing to wrangle, but I don't think there's any person that was involved in that event that didn't enjoy the event and the way it was run. Our club members, they all got in and supported in a massive way, as they do at our golf club for any event that we do run. Some of the learnings we got out of that was the concept is great. I mean, there's no taking away the concept is with a Super 6 shootout on a Sunday is very well liked, well discussed as well. And we received, as I said, great support from our sponsorship. I mean, from our membership, they all get out there and support us. We do look after them. We don't expect them to be coming out doing this for to fill in their day. Players have accepted these tournaments as a way of the future because they're now participating in all of these Charles Tour events now, are all playing for the same money. We see a big demand for women in golf as well, so we're still going down that track. We run a very successful Discover Golf program once a year. That's for 30. We take a class of 30, and that is always oversubscribed. So we're pretty happy with that. As I said, we own this initiative, and we think it's great for our city as well. The future, we will continue to run this event. We've got dates confirmed for 2021 from the 4th to the 7th of March. That's the actual golf itself. The tournament is a feature on our new golfing calendar. We are currently negotiating with a very strong New Zealand back to New Zealand first child, so we're hoping that we can keep him here. We're just trying to lock that in now. We will have coverage on Sky Sport Next. That's the new sporting channel that's out there. So we will have good coverage on that. And if you can have good and bad out of COVID, all of the Australian golf tournaments with their professionals have been cancelled this far out. If our bubble happens to open up a little bit, we might be successful in getting some of them over in March. Decision on the New Zealand Open. We follow the New Zealand Open. That's to be made, I understand, at the beginning of December. They're totally reliant on international players to fill their field, whereas we're going more local based. We will continue to engage with the women and the girls for this event and carry on with the same events that we had, and we'll certainly be continuing to work with our partners on this event. And we're kicking this off now and ready to move on this event, which we find it's very exciting, great for our club. We enjoy it.
Thanks, Warren. I think you're right to time. You've 1 minute to go.
Practice.
Okay. The first question up is the Mayor.
Thanks, Warren. Couple of questions. You said you own the concept, but is New Zealand Golf backing it as well?
Yes, they are. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing legally binding in that if someone wanted to go and do one, but we'll have the bragging rights of being first. Dean supporting us fully on us being the sole Super 6 provider on the annual calendar. So we can stick to that. That'll be great.
So it's unlike the PGA, which could be just the highest bidder sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is a club event, runs under the operation of New Zealand Golf, but yeah, I mean, it stays at the Manawatu Golf Club. It can't go. This event can't go from our club to Tasman or Canterbury or something like that.
Right. And Sport Manawatu have been supportive?
Oh, very much so. I mean, it's last year they were involved. We've got an application currently sitting with Trevor right now. I'll just bring that up, Trevor.
Oh, sorry, Trevor, I didn't see you there.
and I mean, yeah, very good to work with them and very supportive.
Yeah. And you touched on the volunteers, but I mean, we all know how important volunteers are in sport. Could the club run it without volunteers?
No, I'd have to say no, not to the degree of the professionalism that we want to deliver this at. I think that we had 80 people totally involved out of our club. I mean, some, I mean, they're all on a roster system, but some just commit for 7 days of that week. So to run it as a top class event, we do it different. You go to those other tour events, they don't have signage, they don't have a lot of things that go with golf tournaments. The next biggest tournament to this one in New Zealand is the New Zealand Open, as far as how the place looks and runs and operates and all that sort of stuff.
Thank you.
Councillor Rutherford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Warren. It's really great to hear that you're addressing gender equity in sport. I've got two questions. The first is around numbers. So how many participants you had who played and how many volunteers you had?
Just with the volunteers, we had 80, and they were a mix of young and old. Around the players, we had 90 players participate, but we can go to a maximum of 144. We're very confident for 21 we will have the maximum, and there will be a cut to make that field from the indications that we're feeding into us now.
It's really positive. And then just my second question was, how are the men doing now? Are they okay? Have they recovered?
Lots of tissues.
One drives around with his number plate called Fig, so I'll let you work that out. But yeah, I mean, he apologised sincerely, and it was just, I mean, when they're playing for money, they're under pressure. COVID was, we got the tournament out of the way just a couple of weeks before COVID and lockdown. There was a little bit of this apprehension starting to creep in as well. I mean, these guys don't do anything else but hit golf balls and play for money. And he was heading to Japan. He couldn't get there. So I suppose he had some added pressures. Plus he had a new baby. But yeah, I mean, they've had to accept this now because all of these tour events in New Zealand now are gender equity. So it's good.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Warren, look, thanks very much for coming along today. Firstly, just in terms of a stock take post the tournament, does Manawatu Wanganui Golf Association have any idea of the impact that's had in terms of membership for both perhaps women and also for juniors?
It's been a weird year because most clubs in the Manawatu region have had increases in membership because of COVID. People haven't gone away. They haven't been able to play certain other sports, but they've had to be able to play. I mean, our membership totals we're up about 45 across all categories at our club, which is not. I mean, it's a trend right throughout the country as well. We've just about got a cap on our junior program right now. We've got huge numbers of juniors playing golf, and it's a matter of managing kids because they're pretty exuberant and run everywhere, and you would probably see them from time to time, Pat. But I mean, the region is going through a golf increase at the moment, which is great for us and great for all the outlying golf clubs. So, I mean, the Manawatu Golf Association is going to go through a different transition period in the next 12 months as well. So, I mean, how that will look in 12 months, I'm not totally sure, but golf will be a little bit, administration-wise, will be a little bit different in this area, and that's a first for this country, for New Zealand as well. What's coming forward?
Great, thanks. And I've just got one other question there. Just in terms of spectators, sort of what would be the capacity of spectators that you could actually have on course at any one time? And is there anything that we could do to actually kind of sort of, I suppose, build some interest locally to actually get people to come along and watch it?
It's funny, we've just completed a Sport Manawatu questionnaire yesterday, and we figured we could put 5,000 people on there as spectators comfortably. When you're running the Super Sixes, you've only got, on the final day, you've only got 6 holes. So your whole course is pretty congested with people. I mean, we don't have any barriers where they shouldn't walk. It's a common sense thing. So for this to really boom in 21, if we could come up with a named player, I think the spectators will come in their own right. I think that's what will happen because you won't have the luxury of seeing the quality of those sort of players. I see. I mean, it's a communication thing. I mean, we're involved. We have your big screen. We try and do everything with working with Grant and Leone in our discussions that we've had previously. I just think that I mean, we've tried different advertising models as well, but I do think the word will get out there if we can have this named player. I mean, I was hoping to do it a couple of weeks ago. It hasn't happened as yet. I know. I mean, the guy's in quarantine right now, so we're hoping to have an announcement pretty soon, which will be it'll be good. I mean, it will bring people along naturally.
Councillors, right.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Warren, and especially for the good photos, including one of the mayor's photo. It looks lovely. As you said, it's probably the second biggest golf tournament in New Zealand. Was there any interest from Sky TV, or is there any effort to bring them on board?
The Sky Sport Next channel is a channel that is subsidised by New Zealand Golf. That went with this event. I think it cost them $650,000 to have Sky record to have live coverage of the New Zealand Open. I mean, that cost is that's too prohibitive for us to even to try and go down that track. I mean, golf is a rugby match. You can have a rugby match here and you can have 3 or 4 cameras, whereas a golf tournament, they've got to be scattered everywhere. I understand it's the manpower from Sky that where the costs creep up. So at this stage, we'll be just sticking with Sky Sport Next.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
There was a YouTube clip as well that we sent through to Sportman 2. It was a 20-minute segment on the event. I can send that through to you, Leone, and you might want to share that so people can have a look at that.
Good idea.
Have a look at that link.
Thank you.
On the event. It was a couple of young guys out of Auckland, hard cases, and did a great job.
Great. Councillor Meehan.
Thank you, Warren. Is that on? My question was around how you actually played the tournament. I think I've gathered it was 6 holes. How did you have the 90 go? At separate times or?
Yeah, good question. What happens on the Thursday is you have the full field play 18 holes and they go off in 10-minute intervals. So they played in threes and they go off it. So you've got a rolling start from they start at 8 o'clock, so it goes through to about 11. So they play 18 holes on Thursday. They all play 18 holes on Friday. And then on Friday night, we had a cut to 64. And the 64 plus ties went out and played on Saturday over 18 holes. And then the field on Saturday night was cut to 24. Now, to get the final 24 out of the match play concept, you had to have playoffs. And that got exciting. There were 6 guys in a playoff fighting for one position. And that playoff went on one of the holes went on for 3 holes. It's tough on those players. I mean, we had a young fellow called Nick Voke out from the States, and Nick sent me an email the other day to say that he was coming home and he would be playing in it again. He's on the 2nd tier to the US PGA. He's on the next tier down. He was saying he was more worn out of playing in that event. He got beaten in the semi-final than playing in a normal 72-hole event. He had to survive the playoff, and then he had to go and play his match plays. And if they're all square after 6 holes on the Sunday, they then have to have a shootout again to go to the next round. It's tough. It's pretty pressure on those players.
Excellent, thanks. And who was the overall winner?
Daniel Hillier, the young fella up there. He's a young guy out of Wellington. That's him with his parents. That was Daniel's 2nd win on the Charles Tour event. He was to go off to the States to play over there, but COVID kept him back, and he's still back in New Zealand. He hasn't got to go there yet. He's a very, very bright young talent on New Zealand golf professional ranks.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Warren. Really appreciate you coming in today and appreciate all the hard work that you and your committee have put into this tournament. Obviously, from the level of questions, everybody's been very interested in this. So thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity.
So I'll look to move the deputation, seconded by Councillor Meehan. I'll just look to see if there's any comment. Thanks, Mr. Meehan.
I couldn't let it pass. This is golf's T20, and I think it's great that it's inclusive. I was actually there on the Sunday and saw the tantrums thrown, and it was quite funny actually. But I think it's fantastic that men and women are playing together and playing for the same prize money. I think that's a really positive thing. I think that because Manawatu Golf owns it, it ticks a lot of boxes. You're adding to the volunteer network here. I don't think it can be done without the volunteers. Juniors and women's golf is getting a lot more profile, and it seems a lot more participation as well. And it's an elite event because we don't have a huge amount of elite events here. And by all accounts, the second highest profile golf event in New Zealand. And it really adds to the economic and the sport profile for our city. Plenty of spectators. I can tell when the cars are banked right round the whole lagoon. That you know, because the car park there's totally full, and you know that there's plenty of people there. So well done to the club. Great collaborative event. Acknowledge Sport Manawatu for backing it as well as all the other partners. So thanks, Warren, and your team.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you, Warren. We'll look to vote on this. All those in favour? Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Okay, we'll look to the second item, which is item number 6. So we've got Vaughan and we've got Tony. Okay, Vaughan, would you like to introduce Tony?
Kia ora koutou, councillors. It's my pleasure to welcome back Tony Giles, who's the CEO of New Zealand Softball. They first come to this table to promote the idea of having this world event. Can I also acknowledge, before I pass it to Tony to share, other board members in attendance, Sasha Haskell, who was a council appointee as a GM, CEO of Sport Manawatu, Trevor Shaler, and also can I acknowledge our Mayor, Grant Smith, as ex officio to the board. But can I invite Tony to share further?
Just before you start, just remember you've only got 10 minutes.
We realise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kia ora, Vaughan. Thank you. To Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And to the Mayor and councillors, guests, thank you for the opportunity. This event was simply incredible for Softball New Zealand. We were so proud to bring this event, the WBSC Under-18 Men's Softball World Cup, to the city. What an outstanding opportunity we had. The engagement with the city was just unreal. And quite frankly, the timing could not have been more perfect for obvious reasons, right? So we were blessed as well. So thank you again for allowing us to be here. This event really, from woe to go, it was 110 miles an hour. We literally got the hosting rights of this event 12 months out from delivery. Softball New Zealand went out to many councils to have discussions, many associations to have discussions around awarding the rights. It came down to 2 councils that had the most interest, and I was delighted to say that Palmerston North City Council truly partnered us in this event, and it was fantastic to bring it to regional New Zealand. The Under-18 Men's Softball World Cup was a true success. Just good. You want to try that for me, Vaughan? There we go. Next page. Yeah. So the event was held at Kilhoun Park in Palmerston North from the 22nd of February through to finals day on the 1st of March this year. And the event showcased the ability of this city, Softball New Zealand, and the local Manawatu region to come together in true partnership. It was an outstanding feat. This was literally the field of dreams. What was there was nowhere near what we needed to deliver a World Cup pinnacle event. So we literally started from scratch, and that meant we had to have some really honest, transparent, and great dialogue with many stakeholders. The City Council was outstanding. Sport Manawatu were outstanding. Our key local sponsors were outstanding. Softball New Zealand, WBSC, all together were great. WBSC, World Baseball Softball Confederation. 12 international federations came to your city, and 6 of them were here for 17 days prior to the event. It was incredible. We had teams that represented all 5 confederations internationally for our game, and that is from Africa, Americas, Asia, Europe, and of course, Oceania. We put together a local organising committee to actually run the event. That committee was known as Softball 2020 Limited. We were delighted that after elections, Councillor Vaughan Dennison chaired that committee, and we were delighted to have Sasha Haskell, Trevor Shaler, and other locals, including Vanessa Miller, Adrian Young, and Dennis Jenkins from Massey University, who were actually on that working committee. The Mayor, Mr. Grant Smith, and myself were ex officios, and we appointed an independent contractor to deliver the event on our behalf, and that was SB Events. Young Chanel Barrett did an incredible job. We needed to work together in partnership to raise funds for the facilities. A budget of over $2 million was ultimately required to bring this event together. That budget was a cohort between multiple partners that included the council, that included Sport Manawatu, Sport New Zealand. It also included local partners and specifically the Central Energy Trust that were just incredible in partnering the event. And of course, the Class 4 sector as well. Those trusts were amazing in supporting us getting off the ground. Manawatu Softball Association, who are located at Colquhoun Park, were the main shareholder. Just flip.
Sarah, will you be able to slide onto the image of the diamond?
Colquhoun Park, yeah. This one here. So just 6 months out from the first pitch being delivered, that was our field of dreams. That was the very day that WBSC themselves flew from America to be here to see our wonderful facility. We showed them that wonderful piece of dirt and they almost fell over. But we sold them the dream. They believed in us and we knew that we could do it. There was a wonderful contractor on site doing the clubhouse facilities, appointed by the council. We had some wonderful volunteers doing our piece of work on Diamond, and we truly did work together to get there. The next page shows you some of those deliveries. So if you look at the clubhouse pictures left, top and right, the work that was done to extend that clubhouse, which is a multi-sport stakeholder facility. Rugby is housed there, softball is housed there. The Colquhoun Sports Park Trust runs the facility. Other community sports are played there, including basketball and tennis. It's a wonderful facility for that community. And the picture on the top right there is just outstanding. That was the Field of Dreams, completed, lights installed, consented. Probably the world's greatest softball outfield turf we've ever seen. In fact, WBSC commented on it. It was world class. And that goes down to one of your contractors here for the council, Glenn Finlayson, who just did a phenomenal job for him. Next page, please. So we had a number of partners that supported us, as I mentioned. Obviously, the City Council, thank you again for all of your support there. But local partners really got in behind this, okay? Local businesses. Norwood and IPU were the principal commercial partners. We had Central Energy Trust, the Class 4 partners, Sport New Zealand and Sport Manawatu, who all came to the party to ensure we could that we could deliver this. But the Manawatu Softball Association, led by Janine Schoon, was outstanding. Next page just shows all of the local partners that really did come to the party, both fiscally and through value in kind. It was outstanding. We thank you for that. The next page, we talk about our volunteers. None of this could happen, a World Cup event in this city, without an incredible base of volunteers. And that's where Sport Manawatu came into their own. Trevor's team, particularly Whitney and co, did an outstanding job. We had 90 volunteers every single one of our 8 days on site, okay? There were over 950 volunteer tasks to be achieved across this event. And those people on shift came in and did an incredible job. You can see there some of the pictures that were involved there. We go forward to ticket sales on the next page. We sold just shy of 1,800 tickets for the event, but we did give away almost 1,000 free tickets to ensure your community, our community, to come and be part of this. All under 12s, of course, were free. Okay, we wanted this to be a family environment, and it truly was. Okay, 1,000 school children attended the event as part of an adopt a school, adopt a team program. Every single one of those 12 international federations that came here aligned with a primary or intermediate school, and that school supported that team, and that team went to that school, engaged, did language lessons, did activity around softball lessons. It was fantastic. And they came out and held their placards and cheered for their team. It was great. We'll just continue on around the accommodation for the city. Obviously, the Softball 2020 Limited had to pay for all of the 12 federations that came, including the 50 or so international officials that travelled here. And we had to house them through partners within the city. The Distinction Hotel was superb, and they hosted the WBSC themselves entirely and solely. The Distinction Coachman Hotel, the Copthorne Hotel, the Villas, IPU, the SRI at Massey University, and the Holiday Park, Palmerston North Holiday Park, did an outstanding job for all of our teams. This worked out entirety to be over 7,500 bed nights for your city. It was incredible. 3,000 of those bed nights were for the teams alone. It was just fantastic. The next page just highlights some of those school visits. You can see Argentina there and Czech Republic. That school program was sensational. And the next page, the volunteers, the kids that came from those schools that went into the dugouts with the teams as bat children and played with those teams was just that memory itself will be fantastic. Again, Whitney and the team from Sport Manawa 2 were fantastic. I know we're rushing through time here. Is there a chance, Sarah, we can play that little 90-second clip? No, okay. We had a wonderful banquet in the green room.
You're very close to time.
Thank you. At the SRI. We also had a wonderful pofity and welcome in the square that the city hosted. If we can just flick through to those pages, it was just outstanding. Again, Sky Television, folks, broadcast every single one of these games. 50 games live on Sky Sport, 30 into New Zealand and all 50 internationally. I know we're done for time, so I will stop there other than to say what an incredible event. We thank the city. Japan won the thing at the end of the day. New Zealand didn't quite compete as we would like to, but they will move on. And this legacy that you've created at Calhoun Park is being used again this weekend by our under-23 national team, and we'll continue to do that as we go on over the next decades.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vaughan. Okay, I'll look to take questions. Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Bob, for the presentation. I'll just speak up. Was really just interested in your points at the end around where to next. It sounds like you've got some utilization plans, but what do you see that look like in, say, 3 to 5 years' time?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. The legacy and ongoing demand for facilities in New Zealand at Calhoun Park now provides wonderful movement going forward. This is now the second on our ranking list of facilities in the whole country. What we've done there is outstanding. So besides ELE Stadium in Auckland, this is now where we come to for all of our events. So age group national championships, senior national championships, and potentially further world championships, including at senior level, are on the horizon in the next kind of 5 to 10 years.
That looks like that's all the questions. Thank you so much. Do appreciate all the work that has been done by both you and your committee of people that did come
Great.
and help you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you would see that the administrators have circulated that video clip link for your additional information. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tony. I'll look to move the report, seconded by Councillor Rutherford, and I'll look for comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Vaughan. Madam Chair, I think when I die and come back, I'll come back as a world softball or baseball official, because they enjoyed themselves here in New Zealand. But seriously, we did leave a legacy. I think the facility, most of the councillors will realise that Calhoun Park was had good bones, but it was relatively tired as far as a facility was concerned, and the timing. I think from when we decided we were going to do something formally as a council and upgrade Calhoun to when we delivered the tournament, I think it was about a year, and we had to get lights and consents and resource consents. So it was a really quite a magnificent collaboration to build what is we've just now been told, New Zealand's #2 international softball facility. I think also to get an organising team together from the city to deliver a world event was fantastic, and the 90+ volunteers. I want to single out Adrian Young, AJ from Manawatu Softball. He basically lived there for about the last 3 months, and those that were on the committee will know we couldn't have got it over the line without him. Also, Dennis Jenkins from Massey. He didn't have to do this, but he decided he was going to give something back, and he came in and really just helped us with all the accommodation, because you heard the many, almost thousands of bed nights that were there, and Dennis handled the whole lot. Also from our team, acknowledge our Parks and Reserves people, especially Glenn Finlinson. He did a fantastic job on the turf, and we've been told how great that is. But that weekend that it opened, we had I don't think there's many times we've had 2 international televised sporting events on in the city. We had here at the stadium, the NRL was on with the Warriors playing Melbourne Storm. And on the other side of town, some of us were running from one to the other, we had the opening of the World Softball. So, look, it was great for our city. We got huge profile, as well as the economic benefit and the TV coverage. And I think also Japan winning it, although New Zealand, we want New Zealand to win. If there was a second best team, Japan, because IPU dined out on that for ages, and it was great to see. So well done, Tony. Just keep bringing those Black Sox tests back to us. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dingwall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to echo some of the comments that the Mayor has said around the success of this event. I actually was quite sceptical at the start of this, because I'm not a fan of sports in general, and I didn't know anything about softball, so I had raised quite a few eyebrows when I heard about this. But then when I actually went down and saw the huge amount of progress that we'd made in that event, and I heard about all the volunteers that were involved, and the sheer improvements that was made to the park, and then the community engagement, and then bringing my daughter along, who's 16, and her getting so excited about it that she decided she was going to start playing softball. And then suddenly every night we're either at the event or we're at home watching it on TV and talking to relatives in Dunedin about what was happening here in Palmerston North, which was really, really cool. So I think it's awesome that you managed to get the entire city and the entire community behind you with this project, and that's to be congratulated.
Thank you. There looks to be no further comments, so we'll look to vote. All in favour? It looks to have passed. Thanks, everyone. Right, we'll move on to the next item, which is the minutes. I'll look to move the minutes, seconded by Councillor Meehan. We'll look to vote on the minutes. Oh, sorry. Councillor Denison, back. We'll look to vote on the minutes. All in favour on the minutes? Yep, that's passed unanimously. We'll move on to the next item, which is item number 10. So I think we've got, yep, is that Julie? That is page 51. 51? So we're just trying to accommodate different people. So we've got page 51, item number 10, which is the artificial turf needs assessment.
Kia ora koutou. Julie McDonald, and I'm joined by Anne-Marie Murray, who's the author of this report. The recommendations, I think, are fairly straightforward, so we're happy to have any questions.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Julie and Marie. So where this came from was if we go right back, was from Central Football. Have they had much engagement recently with you?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, Central Football have engaged well with the development of this report, and we're hoping to be here today. I'm not sure whether anyone has joined by Teams, but they were certainly invited and kept in the loop with the development of this report.
Just one. So, if we go further ahead, are they going to contribute to it in some way?
That hasn't been established yet. I think we would all like to think that they would, and they have in the past raised some things that they were looking at to potentially contribute towards the capital contribution side of it. But I suppose that would be something that would be teased out in the next stage of work.
Thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks for the report. Just around the feasibility study, like if it were to be commissioned, how sort of long would it be fresh for before we, would either have to do something with it or let it lapse?
Sort of hard to tell. I would hope that it would give impetus to the project to proceed after that point. I suppose we have done a lot of work leading up to this point. So yeah, the next phase of work is probably the critical one, where we draw everything together to actually determine what, I suppose, future funding or future investment from that council would be making towards the facility.
Thanks. I guess then to sort of follow that up, because if we're going to drop this into the 10-year plan process as a feasibility, we probably wouldn't be necessarily knowing the envelope that would be needed to actually realize the full project. So sort of how would that work in terms of a planning process?
I think to go back a step, I guess the reason that this project has been so drawn out is because I think council perhaps started at the wrong end in the first place and made provision for something without knowing the scope of it. So all this work does is propose that we start at the beginning and that a proposal, if there is one, is proposed through that planning process. We have no other way of doing that. So by the time the 10-year plan is adopted, following the 10-year plan adoption, I mean, obviously there will be the ability to consider council's level of commitment, but there wouldn't be a detailed proposal at that stage.
Thanks both. That's helpful, Madam Chair.
So, Julie, just going through that again, that timeline, you're saying, what would be the timeline then if we just sketch that out?
At the moment, the intention is to put the feasibility work into year one of the 10-year plan process, and then I suppose after that we would have greater certainty about what work would be followed. But I mean, I think I'm just looking over to the operational staff whether they can help me out here. Those budgets are still being carried forward into the next 10-year plan at this point. But yeah, obviously we're yet to have those discussions. Kathy may be able to.
So Kathy, can you go over to the microphone? We can't hear you. And can you identify yourself for the recording?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
The feasibility, if completed in year one, we would then look at anything to do with planning, consenting, fundraising year two. We wouldn't start turning the turf until year three at the earliest, and probably it would be open at the beginning or towards the end of year four. So it's quite a long process. If you think about the development of the artificial turf here, and we didn't have that lead in feasibility or fundraising parts to it, it really is probably a year four before we is available for play.
That's why the question from the Mayor is quite crucial in terms of knowing whether or not, I don't know who I'm asking this question about Central Football, is really important, because if they're coming in as a partner potentially, we don't know. I don't know who I'm asking the question to.
I think any proposal that was made through the 10-year plan would be placeholder budgets anyway. Until there's a concrete proposal, we can't invite partners to be involved with that. The intention would be that Central Football and other partners would be involved in discussions and is obviously informing that feasibility study. But until there was a concrete proposal, it would be very difficult to fundraise or be more certain.
Thank you. That just gives it a little bit more clarity. Councillor Rutherford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the report. I'm just wondering, there's a couple of points in here where it's mentioned in regards to the needs assessment and specifically talking about winter sports codes and the numbers coming through there that will increase with population. Do we have any data, and it may have come through that needs assessment, but I don't recall it, that actually would indicate that specifically football is either seeing an increase in participation or there's forecasted to be an increase? I guess I'm just trying to get a bit more understanding around the hypothetical demand at this stage to support a $35,000 assessment done at this point in time.
Through you, Madam Chair. To answer that, I think the detail is in the report, and just from memory, football are predicting a conservative increase in their numbers. I mean, they are one of our top three outdoor field sport codes. So I think the numbers are looking encouraging. However, I mean, we've had events this year which could completely upset any of those predicted numbers, but I think the numbers in the needs assessment would show that football have a strong aspiration to grow their sport like many others, and yeah, so I think that I'm confident that football is predicting growth, and not just growth as a result of population, but in growing their sport.
Thank you. And then just in regards to the involvement of Central Football, obviously they initiated this request originally coming in. What's their involvement been since the original request, and since, with your most recent conversations aside, have they, is this something they've been continually pushing? Have they been quite active in this space? Have they been lobbying, the mayor or other parties around keeping this on the agenda, or is it sort of been once they came in and spoke, that's been it?
Through you, Madam Chair, I can't answer the question about whether they've been lobbying the mayor. So, as you will recall, this has been a long time coming, this report, and whilst the initial request came through Central Football, as a request for a new turf, Council has taken time to go back and look at, more broadly at need across the city, more broadly at the specific proposal that was made by Central Football. So while they have informed and been part of those discussions and have certainly been helpful along the way, I would like to speak as to, what their particular view is as to the response to their last 10-year plan submission, which was for a new artificial football turf. I guess this conversation has taken it a little bit wider to other codes, and obviously if this feasibility study was to go ahead, there'd be other codes involved in that discussion, and not only football.
Thank you.
Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your report. Just around the budget, the 83k budget, program 1133, that's been allocated this year. That hasn't been used at all, has it?
Through you, Madam Chair. My understanding is some of that has been used and some has been proposed to be carried forward.
Okay, so would some of that be the RSL report that's in here at the moment?
I'll just check that with Kathy I think that was certainly the intention, that some of that budget was to be put forward to assist with some of that phase of the needs assessment. But
it's a little bit more complicated than that because this is a capital budget, and the feasibility study and the needs analysis work that's been done is operational expenditure. So council in an earlier resolution enabled us to use some of that money, but we wouldn't carry forward that money unless it was a capital investment we were going to make. So we're going to have to probably just do a bit of a wash up at the end of the year to work out what we need in terms of funding going forward. Probably the recommendation would be a separate pool of money that was identified as operational expenditure would be my recommendation, given that we may not end up creating an asset.
Okay, so just to clarify, so that 83k budget will be some residue of that will be left over for this financial year?
Yes, because it is capital budget.
And it can't be carried. Yep, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Amir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think my question's in the same space. So number 2, where there's a recommendation to do a feasibility study at a cost of 35,000. Is that already in operational budgets, or is it it's new money?
It's an additional proposal.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's all the questions that have been asked. So thank you very much for your report. So I'll look to move the recommendations, seconded by Councillor Meehan, and open it up for discussion. Mia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I will support this. I didn't like the answer I got at the end there, that it was new money. And here I am preaching to everybody that we shouldn't be introducing new money, but this actually has been on our books for quite a while, and I think we need to ask ourselves the question, do we need another artificial turf? And the needs assessment, if you look into part of this report, says yes, over the next 10 years there's a 14% increase on football, and it's currently one of our top 3 sports. And depending on which lens you look through, it arguably is our number one sport. In terms of numbers and participation. I think also, should it be a dual code or a single code turf? If it was a single code, you're 90% sure it would be probably from football. I mean, football has had a checkered history in the city. You can't take away how popular it is. It's certainly participation-wise right up there. Previously had high-level teams here. But there is interest, I believe, from Central Football. No, they haven't been beating my door down, lobbying me. But I do know last time that we connected, they said that there would be some interest from them, and possibly their partners at New Zealand, higher up at New Zealand Football and FIFA. But I think this would be obviously a multi-year, and the feasibility study would tease out who the partners would be. In the same way we've partnered with artificial turfs with hockey. It doesn't mean to say the city does all the heavy lifting, but do we need to be involved? I think so. So I'd ask you to support this to the next level anyway. Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, I was involved in the last, when we went through this, I think about a year and a half ago with the selection process, and we didn't get it right. And that's why we're doing this again. And I think that we need to get this process right by doing this feasibility study first. And that's what this is about, is getting the feasibility study first and going through the right process. And that's what Kathy outlined to us was the correct process. Putting this into next year and then outlining it and putting it into the next 10-year planning process. So getting it into the right process, which is what Kathy outlined to us. There is a need for another turf. It could be a dual purpose turf. We don't know where it would be. We could get a partner, but that's not the right process to talk about it right now. That's for later on down the track, which is what the officers outlined to us. So we do need to let it take its time and take its course. We didn't do that right the last time. We need to get this process right this time and do it right. And I don't think we did it right last time. We need to make sure we get it right and get a good another turf and get the utilisation up of that turf for the city, because we're a growing city with big needs. Councillor Naylor.
Am I on?
Yeah.
I think this is a useful report and useful information. I'm happy to support it on the basis that the wording is about referring it to our 10-year plan process, which basically isn't actually locking us into any new money at this point. It's simply agreeing that that will be considered alongside other priorities in that process. So it may or may not make the cut, but I think it's important to identify that that's what we're doing today, not necessarily saying a definite yes to that.
Yeah. That's what it does do. That's what recommendation 2 does. Yeah. Any other comments? No, we'll look to vote. Happy all to go together? Okay. I'll put all 3 together. All in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. We're flying along. So now, when's he coming in? He's coming at 3:20. So we're going to go to item number 11. Sorry, everybody. We're still waiting for our young person to come in. Item number 11. We haven't forgotten you, Robert. So this is on page 115. Right, welcome Trevor. Thanks for being here for the whole meeting. You got lots of praise at the first 2 presentations. Welcome, handing it over to you.
Kia ora. So to Julie McDonald, and introducing obviously Trevor Shaler, who's here to answer the tricky questions about this proposal for a repurposing of carried forward sports event partnership funds. So this is a COVID related report, obviously, due to councillor decision making earlier in the year and the lack of ability for these funds to be fully spent. Just as a reminder to councillors that $20,000 of the Sports Event Partnership Fund was returned to council earlier in the year, and obviously the terms of the agreement with Sport 102 are that unspent funds at the end of the year would be returned if otherwise not spent. So there's a proposal here that the funds be used for to review the fund and to prepare a retention and attraction plan for secondary school and other sports events. And I think, yeah, we can leave it there and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Trevor. Do you want to add anything, Trevor, before we go to questions? No, straight to questions. Okay, Councillor Arapata.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Julie and Trevor. There was a point in the report about the development of a less in-depth piece of work as identified as an action in the current funding agreement. So I'm just trying to understand what the difference is between what is currently in the agreement and what the extra 31,000 is allocated to, and what that looks like.
Kia ora tātou, tēnā mai kia tātou katoa. I am here to answer the tricky question, so thanks for the first tricky question. The output in the plan talks about a retention plan, but it's more focused on the secondary school side of the activity. Whereas what we're looking to do with the utilisation of this budget is to take a broader look at what we're doing around retention and attraction. Often there's a lot of focus on us getting out there and attracting more events to the city. And a key part of the strategy needs to be about how we're retaining the ones that we've got. And obviously there's going to be some other questions that will hopefully come up around that process. Because in effect, what's happened over the last little while, particularly with COVID-19, is there's a lot more focus now on bidding. So in the past, sports would come to us, we'd work with sports, they'd come to us, they would apply, make an application and apply. Now that's not happening. Now they're now comparing us against everybody else. So that's where that whole process around retention is really, really, really important. But the wider scope also looks at making sure that we are getting the most benefit out of the fund. And if I can just go on, and I know this was supposed to be a short answer, but if I go a little bit further and just on your two other speakers that have been here, softball, for example, that's a great, fantastic event. And we did get a lot of praise and mention. So I'm going to have to get the team to stop overperforming. So I'll get them to drop down a little bit. But I think the thing to recognise is the reasons we were able to get that event is because the Sport Event Partnership Fund funded Manawatu Softball to be able to run tournaments here. New Zealand Softball came here and went, far out, look how well these guys are doing, and none of them are paid. They got a screen, they got everything, and then that led to the conversation with Vaughan, which led to us having the event. So the fund works in lots of different ways. And again, if you think about the legacy for the softball, which was talked about, I would say to you, and again, this is partly our role in how the local sports, Manawatu Softball can't currently apply for any funds because they've already applied multiple times and got a lot of funding for the national event. So they've basically have to wait. But also, they're volunteers. So you're still talking about a volunteer sport. And with this amazing legacy at Calhoun Park, still needing to think about actually how do we continue to support them with capability and capacity, particularly when we've got potentially new members wanting to join the sport. So I know it's a long-winded way of saying that the fund, for my mind, isn't just about looking at actually how we're using it to attract events. It actually has a much broader, and so we need to take a broader look at how we're utilising it. And this proposal allows us to do that.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. Just a follow-up question then is, I think you've explained really well the added value in that proposal and broadening it. That's really clear. So just in terms of a practical sense, because $31,000 is a lot of money to broaden a study, does that then look at having a consultant, or is it a decent amount of time applied to doing a study like that that's extended out? Or in practical terms, how do you get to a figure of $31,000 to get to the next level of what you've just explained?
Well, the answer to that tricky question is very carefully, is how we get there. I think the key thing here is we are looking at a consultant, and in effect, what we have done, as I've outlined before, most sports come to us and apply, and we work with them on all sorts of ways to get there. We're now having to bid. So we were asked to bid, which I think it's in part 2 of this meeting. We had to bid for an event, and as part of the bidding process, the realisation that actually we need to get the retention side of our plan sorted, because we were bidding as part of our bid document, realising that actually we're making a range of assumptions around how we're putting this bid together without having a full idea around actually what is it that we're trying to do as part of the bigger, and is this the right sport that we should be identifying, etc., etc. So there's a bit of cart and horse. So that's really why it's really important for us to look at it. But within that, it's also looking about roles and responsibilities right across our with our stakeholders, because the real benefit is in how we're working and leveraging off that together. Sport Manawatu, actually the golf's a really good example with Warren talking about golf. We support golf. You didn't mention that myself and Leonie's husband won one of the tournaments, but that's okay. I'll talk to him later about that. But I think with the golf, see, with our criteria, what Warren's asking for support for that tournament, he won't get the money that he's after because the criteria is such that it'll be a challenge for him. So we have to think a bit more differently around how we're continuing to support. So if you looked at the softball is really great. We supported it, got it started, got it underway. But then when it became a national, international event with TV coverage, etc., then council's team were able to come in and it becomes a core event for council. And then we then play a supporting role. Then on occasion, we're in the lead role. And then other times we're in support role. So, but we haven't really got that nailed yet. That's still, so this report will hopefully tease out some of that. So we're not wanting to review the purpose of the fund. We're wanting to review, the retention of key sports. How many events should we be looking after? How, before we add other activities or focus on other activities.
We're wanting to pick the right fruit.
Yes, and don't get me wrong. I think we've done extremely well for a city with the events that we get, with the money and the resource that we put forward. I think the 200,000 that goes towards that fund. I think the calculation of economic benefits 6.5 million. So it's a significant impact for a small amount. But the 200,000 doesn't actually give you the full picture around the amount of work that goes on with volunteers. And so the softball event, whilst council were the main backer and the funder and the supporter, Sport 102 ran the community engagement and ran all the volunteers. So we paid that. And so in effect, that was our contribution through the strategic relationship with council to support that event. And I think that works really well. We were not double dipping. We're actually adding value to the event, and that's where we probably get a bit more too much praise than we should, because those are quite the neat community aspects of it.
Right, finished? You got
next question.
Lots more questions. Okay, the Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Trevor. I suppose with some of those bigger New Zealand secondary schools events, with three of those bigger ones like the basketball, the volleyball, the cycling going, I mean, that's big, being cancelled up, but they've signalled to us that they want to come back, but it's sort of there's a bit of a hint there that's got to be good if they come back. So would that be a fair assumption?
Oh, totally. And again, I think my view is if we're in a competition with other regions and it's about money, then we're not going in the game. But we've got to rely on stuff that your team has done already with the branding, with the central location. I think that's our added value, and then the support that's required to run it. Because Volleyball New Zealand, for example, has 4 staff. And they're running
one of New Zealand's biggest events.
Yeah, 176 teams. So they actually rely on us to do the volunteers, to do the work. And that's separate to the actual funding that we give them.
So so this money really is around having a proper strategy around, first of all, retention, and then possibly attraction if there's some gaps, and you said are possible, and maybe templates for how we do host things, so we're not reinventing the wheel every time around what I call a tier 1 large event. The 3 ones I just mentioned were probably in that space, or maybe a tier 2, a medium to a smaller event, but still important. Would that be right?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's really, the report will hopefully tease out, as we found with the bid document that we put together, that other teams have done bid documents as well. So just really having a more coordinated approach and how that looks. I know that your team are keen on that as well. So it's just clarifying actually who's leading when and who's supporting. An example would be the netball on at the moment. Now that's run by the venue, that's run by your team who have attracted the Silver Ferns here. So, but then we've had a late request for some support for ushers and different things. So we weren't involved with that event, but so we're able to mobilise and provide some support. But ideally, we would figure out how we're working together.
So it's figuring out who plays what role and at what time.
And how best to add the most value
right,
around that roles and responsibilities. And that's really where the changes come through on the contract between council and the thinking around involving CEDA and council within our process. The challenge that we have is the involvement for council and for CEDA probably needs to be at that leveraging level rather than the decision making. You know, so there's a bit of, because to be honest, once we've decided on 3 of them and they've all got for 40 odd thousand each, there's actually not a lot to decide on after that.
Yeah, so it's just making sure that that panel that you just spoke about is more agile, and they're more of an advisory leverage role, rather than actually ticking off this is what it needs to be. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. I have 2 questions, and probably the first one is for Julie, Trevor, so you can have a little. Julie, it was a question about 3.2 of the report, which talks about council's general intention to do some general events retention work, which is planned for next year. So how do you see this work and that piece of work speaking to each other if this goes ahead?
So that piece of work actually sits with Marcon, so I'm not sure if Sasha wants to speak to that. Just as a view. So the piece of work that Trevor is proposing does relate closely to that. It's just that the piece of work that council is looking at is broader than sports events. At the moment, council's agreement with Sport Manawatu acknowledges it to be the sport expert agency, and as long as that agreement is in place, they're the relationships and they're the roles that are being played. The piece of work that would happen internally is about the broader events situation, given that Marcons has that responsibility now and increased capacity in the area. So I don't know if Sasha, you want to.
So I suppose my question specifically is, do these need to align for us to get maximum effectiveness from that, or are they 2 separate pieces of work?
Oh gosh, it's out. So I do think that in terms of the streams of work, they are very much should be integrated because we're talking about events attraction in the city. I think what Trevor's talking about here is, and in particular, roles and responsibilities and how we can capitalise on a number of different relationships, whether that's CEDA, whether that's council, whether it's Sports Manawatu, our community networks, to pull together packages that will be compelling enough to replace the cheques that get handed over from other cities who have bigger wallets effectively, so that it's an easy decision to run events here. So they're very much aligned, and I guess this particular suggestion here is taking that arm's length view, looking at all the different stakeholders of how that could be pulled together.
Thank you, Sasha. And my second question, which is for you, Trevor, but it isn't. I don't think it's tricky. You'll be fine. It's about 3.4 of the report, which just recognises that if you spend this money on a report, that's money that you don't have to go out attracting events. So I suppose my question to you is, you obviously think that's a better investment to do the background work than to have that $30,000 for investment. Fair summary?
Yes, yep, that's a fair summary. I think we're anticipating another surplus because unfortunately those events with COVID didn't come back as quickly or didn't happen. So volleyball and basketball we're gonna delay and be later in the year, but it didn't eventuate with what happened in Auckland. So you know we are expecting to see a surplus next year. So we think this is a really good opportunity for us to be ready and prepared and have all of our I's dotted and T's crossed. But in saying that, the planning's got to start for volleyball. You know, what are we in October, November? They're here in March. So.
But you don't need the money.
No, I'm saying that we're going to be returning a surplus anyway, so it's a good use of the money right now to be able to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Dingwall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Most of my questions have been answered, but I guess I just wanted a little bit of clarity around. So using these funds would look at how you're working with CEDA as well and bringing that all into the one package. Is that what I'm hearing for the last couple of?
That will be that's certainly part of the puzzle, and it has to be part of. And we've actually talked about it collectively, talked about how we might do that because we've all got different remits. So I think it is about the added value. I suppose for Sport Manawatu, if I'm just talking for us, we've tended to the money that we get from council for that fund is for the fund. And then sitting behind that is all of the operating costs. And I mean, I think there wasn't that long ago, one of the councillors here suggested, you know, should we get some more money to then have somebody employed to do more of that work, given the economic benefit. So we're not suggesting that at all, but at this point, but what we're saying is it's a good use of the money to really join up all of the dots to make sure that we're in the same space and that we're real focused around what we're doing with adding value.
Excellent, thank you.
Finally, Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. And sorry if this kind of doubles up a little bit with questions others have asked, but I'm still struggling a little bit to fully understand how investment in what it seems like will be a report that costs $31,000 will improve things going forward. I guess my question is, that report that will clarify roles and responsibilities and perhaps tell you how to do things better going forward, are there other more cost-effective ways for you to find that information out by talking to the right, having a discussion, talking to the right people to help inform that?
That's a very good question. I mean, it's like anything. There's a whole lot of different ways in which we can approach it. What we're talking about in terms of the working more together and all the rest of it, we've been talking about that for some time. So I think this report is, whilst you're looking at the money, the report does look at a reference group and bring in all of the stakeholders together. So it does form part of that total overview. But it's really important to say to you that it's not just about roles and responsibilities. It's actually about what number of sports should we be focused on? Where would we be at capacity? You know, because we have had, I mean, the discussion earlier with softball. At the same time, we had softball on and we had rugby league. You know, so that can be a challenge.
And just, thank you.
Can I just add to that? Just to add that this is currently an unbudgeted piece of work. So it's, whilst Wastewater is working in that area and coordinating with council and with CEDA on the Sports Event Partnership Fund, the piece of work that's proposed here is not currently within the contract. So it won't be happening if this funding isn't allowed.
Thank you. My second question really is a follow-up to Councillor Bowen's question that Sasha answered about the other piece of work that's happening in the events and festivals space. And I'm just wondering how much will that be another consultant doing another report, and how much is that a double up on what's being proposed here?
I know the answer to that. My understanding is that that's being done in-house within current resources.
Okay, so further to that then, sorry, just to further, so if that work, are we doing things around the wrong way? If that work was to be done, would that adequately inform the information that's being sought here through this other reports?
Sasha might like to follow up, but my understanding is that that would be a lesser piece of work than the one discussed here. It wouldn't be as in depth.
I think potentially the additional scope would be having the ability to, at arm's length, look at what other cities have done in this space. We wouldn't have the capacity to look extensively at that. However, a lot of the work that we can, I guess, produce and support in this area will contribute a lot to the outcome and the information that would be provided in such a report. So we wouldn't have the ability or capacity to go and research other cities and what other organisations are doing in the space, but we would have capacity to talk about and liaise with internally staff within, organisations within the city to see how we could capitalise and improve in this area.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's exhausted the questions. Thanks, Trevor and Julie. So I'll look to move the report, seconded by Councillor Dennison. So we'll look to go into comment. I will start. I think this is a really good suggestion by the officer and by Trevor, because I think that using this fund for this purpose is a good idea and it does make some sense. We need to be able to work out exactly what we need to do for this, for the industry and for the event fund. And that's what Trevor has outlined for us going forward. We're not going to get every one of these events in the future. It's not going to be what we've had in the past. Things are going to be very, very different. So we can't take everything for granted. It's not going to be like it was before, because everybody's going to be fighting for exactly the same events that we're fighting for. So we have to do things a lot differently, and we have to make sure we go for the best events that we possibly can get for our city. And that's what Trevor was trying to say in the way that he said it to us quite succinctly. So I think that's where he was coming from. I'll now take other comments from other people. The Mayor and then Councillor Rutherford.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and look, thanks, Trevor and Julie, for your report and your comments or answers to the questions. Look, it's really important that we have a strategy, and not only for retention but also attraction. We're in competition with other cities. We really are. I just came back from Hamilton and I learnt what they're doing up there with their venues, and believe me, they're venues for hire. They're looking for things, and you know, without mentioning what events, they're targeting events all over New Zealand now, because with the international market gone, the focus has come on the domestic market. So our ownership of New Zealand secondary school sporting events has become somewhat crowded now. So you've got Tauranga, you've got Hamilton, you've got Invercargill with a bucket load of cash, Christchurch, Hawke's Bay, Taupo, and some smaller councils that want to fill their stadia or their venues. And, you know, we've heard New Zealand secondary schools market is worth 6.5 million of value created for us, but I think it's probably larger than that when you see not only our venues filled, but motels and others get a slice of that as well. We've had 3 of our biggest secondary school events cancelled: the basketball, volleyball, and the New Zealand cycling. But they've signalled to us that they want to run them again. But there's almost, this is make or break for us. We've got to make sure they go really, really well. And at this stage, and I know this from being involved, every event seems to be bespoke, and everyone's talking to each other, but there's no understanding who's leading, and that was teased out with Trevor's comments. Is it Sport Manawatu? Is it the national sports organisations? Is it the venues? Is it the city? Is it Massey? Is it the clubs? So we've got to have a strategy on who's doing what, and we're not going to win it with a cash bidding war. We've got to offer much more value than that, and we do have value here. Our sporting organisations here are collaborative, and in some cases we've got to do that regionally too with our partners around us, when Horowhenua and Manawatu, especially around cycling. So it's around having some financial support. It's around making sure that we've got our volunteer network really tight, our organising key organisers supported, and I know Sport Manawatu have done that round basketball as an example, where they've heroed up the organisation and softball, and that's had benefits for events downstream. We've got a fantastic central location which the others can't take from us, so we've got to leverage that as well. And having things like making sure our comms and marketing's good, our city and cultural welcomes are on stream, so there's a bit of a template that we can roll out and wrap it all round together. So the work this report will have a clear steer on how we approach this important sector going forward. If we don't do this, we'll continue to just be good but muddling around a little bit. So I do think it's really important work. So please support it.
Thank you. Councillor Rutherford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I first read the report, I think I was pretty on the fence about it and didn't quite understand how we could go from existing budgets to an additional $31,000 for this piece of work. But I think the very long but good explanation from Trevor has provided a lot more clarity around that. And I guess the Mayor's touched on it, that in a post-COVID world, this is going to be a whole different game, and spending some money now to secure economic investment and from sporting events in the future is going to be really important. So I'm really happy to support this now.
Just to clarify, it's not additional budget, it is using existing budget, just so people are quite clear on that. It's just repurposing the existing sports fund budget, so it's not additional. So sorry, moving on. Vaughan, sorry, Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking in support and really concur what's been said previously, we've already put multi-million-dollar investments into our stadium and the arena and other complexes around the community, and we've really rested on our laurels that we've actually attracted these tournaments in the past and believe that we'll get them in the future. But the competitive nature's been applied, and I thought, Trevor, you outlined the benefit that the fund achieves. And most of it, in many cases, is unseen, or the indirect benefit, but the economic benefit certainly pays for itself. And I'm very supportive of the redirecting for this review. Thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think the point I wanted to make was the one that you just covered, is that this is funding that's operational funding that was rated for this year, that's already been handed to Sport Manawatu to do what they do, and now they can't do what they do because of COVID. I'm reminded of the phrase, "A stitch in time saves nine." This post-COVID environment is an opportunity for us to take stock, to have that look out there what everybody else is doing, and I think that for me was the critical element, the point of difference between the two pieces of work that we're talking about. Our in-house piece of work is looking at what we do and what we can do in the city, whereas the consultant piece of work that Sport Manawatu are talking about is a wider piece that looks at what other people are doing and how we get smarter with what we've got to deliver the outcomes that we've got used to, as Councillor Dennison was saying, recognising that the new normal is going to look potentially quite different, and we can't compete with some of the councils with big pockets, and we don't want to compete, and we don't have to if we're smart with the offering that we've got. But Sport Manawatu need this investment to enable them to get smart. So I probably, like Councillor Rutherford, I was a little bit sceptical when it came over because it looked like just trying to use the money up. But I've been convinced that there is value in allocating these funds to Sport Manawatu.
And finally, Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Like others, I was a little bit sceptical and on the fence coming into this too, but I've probably fallen perhaps on the other side. I think attracting, sporting events is something we've done in the city for a very long time, and we've done a really good job of it. I do think we've got a lot of expertise around that, and I've got no doubt that a $31,000 report might give some good ideas how to improve that. But in a cash-strapped year, where I do think we need to ensure that everything we spend or approve is really good value for money, I'm not convinced that that's $31,000 worthwhile spending. I understand that money has been carried forward, which is not our usual financial practice. And if we weren't to approve this today, that would be money that could be reallocated to sports events or could be returned to the council at the end of the year. So it is still ratepayers' money that we need to make a decision about how we spend, or if we spend that money today. So I won't be supporting it.
Thank you. That's everybody who's spoken. So, Councillor, would you like that to be taken separately? Okay. So, Sarah? Sarah, so we'll just vote on number 1 and then we'll vote on number 2 separately. We vote on number 2 first. So all those in favour of number 2, put your hand up. That's everyone except for Karen. Sorry, Karen. Sorry, Karen. So all those against? Okay, if we can now vote on number 1. All in favour? That's passed. Thanks for that. We're just going to have a 7-minute break for a stretch for the toilet and stretch for your legs, because we've just got a guest that's just arrived. So just 7 minutes, everyone. Thank you.
I don't have the what I've got the spray. That's all right. Actually, no, the spray. Don't need the spray. Don't you? No, that's yeah, that's just. Oh, that's much better. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, should we make our way back? I think it's nearly been 7 minutes. 6.5, Billy said. I know, it's so cold. This room's so cold. Yeah. Yep, so just get the order back on track. We are doing item number 8 and then item number 9. And then we'll do the work schedule and then we'll have the part 2 item, just so that we're all understanding the order. Sorry, it's a little bit higgledy-piggledy, but we have got Leo. Where is Leo gone? Hello, Leo. This is page 17, everyone. Welcome. You've got 4 minutes, Leo. And Hannah is going to give you a signal when it's 4 minutes. So she'll just hold up her fingers like this because we haven't got any electronics. A little bit backward today. Okay, you're okay? You're not nervous?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, good.
Councillors, what if I told you that if you were to go to 220 Church Street right now, at this very moment, events would unfold before your eyes where near death and serious injury are very likely. But highly likely is not the same as inevitable. The skate park is supposed to be a place of joy, of excitement, and of character building, and so it is. But only for so long can we put off danger. Can we hide it and ignore it until it musters and grows from one to a plethora of scenarios? And only for so long can it stay static and motionless until ultimately it boils over and becomes into that scenario. And in that scenario is where serious injury, and yes, even death, become inevitable. Such is the intensity of the impending threat at the Palmerston North Skate Park. Presiding above our skate park is a great aura of unrest, and so with good reason. Here's the rundown. It's parents, kids, and older skaters. These people are finding a certain occurrence is happening more and more. Accidents, crashes between older and younger skaters in particular. The older skaters are simply trying to skate, and the younger ones are doing as they do when they're children, frolicking around, not paying much attention to where they're going. And in most instances, that's all it is, an accident, where no one in particular holds the blame. The older skaters are looking around, but sometimes at the speed and populace of the younger children, it is almost impossible to monitor their movement unfailingly. Do any of you have kids? Imagine watching them ride straight into a collision and not being able to do anything about it. This is what the parents at the skate park face every day, having to watch their kids fall down onto cold, unforgiving concrete, and sometimes even a corner. I myself have had to watch paramedics take another skater, someone I knew well, his muscles clenching in pain as they apply pressure to his head cut open. And such is the intensity of our impending threat of our beloved 220 Church Street. And that's why I'm here speaking to you today. All around the skate park itself, people were talking about this. And one solution stood out as popular among the crowd. A new skate park just for the smaller children. Sort of like the current skate park itself, if it itself had a child. A more diminutive and child-friendly version, but not bearing anything too flashy as to bewitch the older skaters into using it. To reference the previous, which I hope is still fresh in your memory, if we do nothing and let danger manifest, we choose to put lives at risk, and we choose to leave these parents crying in tears. Imagine if that parent was you. To do nothing, ladies and gentlemen of the council, is to let casualties rise and to thrive in a state of inevitability. But why should we let this happen when on the flip side there are so many benefits? From simple safety to even helping our already struggling economy and the health of our tamariki, mental health of our tamariki. If you take a good look to the folk there and talk to them, you'll find that many of them are not from Papaioia. Some even come from as far as Taupo, just to use our park. But a children's skate park, building a children's skate park allows for more space on the current. More space equals more people. And more people, so close to the CBD, equals more business opportunity and more money, hopefully, for our struggling businesses. The children's park would also allow for more time for people to actually skate and build self-confidence rather than waiting 20 minutes just for an opening. We already love the skate park, and it's a home to us. It's our tūranga waiwai. Some of us feel it's the only place we are free, the only place we feel confident. But it's becoming harder and harder to feel that way. And we need your help to save our tūranga waiwai. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, I'm in the understanding that you have my full written document in your access, which I could not urge you enough to read. It goes into much more detail about any further questions and talks about the survey I took around the park and the statistics and numbers that fruited from it. I and the whole skating community thank you for the opportunity to come here and present our competition to you. Ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. Are you happy to take some questions?
Yes.
Great. The first one's from the Mayor.
Kia ora, Leo. Thank you. Very, very presidential. Very good. Very nice presentation. Look, this not too flashy junior skate park, where would you see it sited?
We looked at that in the petition, and it would be somewhere close enough as that the parents could be able to watch both their children. But we are aware that the land on the other side, and most of our land is historic value, being the old railway station in the 1870s of Palmerston North. So we were thinking somewhere, as it would only be small, somewhere around, but not past the second fence.
Right. So it'd be almost connected to it, but close to it.
Yes.
All right. So then if there were, say, brothers or sisters, or siblings, they could just be together in that space. Is that what you're trying to?
The whole point of it was we didn't want it too far away, as so that the parents wouldn't be able to watch both of their kids at the same time. So you could have one child playing on the older skate park and one child on the younger skate park, just as a safety precaution, so the parents could watch both their children.
Okay. And how many people did you survey roughly?
I surveyed around 40 people, skaters, parents, and parents.
Thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thanks very much, Leo. That's a really, really good presentation. I'm not sure whether you can answer this, but and maybe the council officers can provide some answers. But I thought we extended the skate park probably around about maybe 10 years ago to be more inclusive for younger children. But I guess the question is, has the number of skaters actually grown to so that they're actually encroaching on that area?
Yes, your extension was of the bowl and the pump track on the other side, and the pump track was supposed to be more child friendly, but it had actually become overrun by other skaters, and our pump track is quite well known around the Manawatu Wanganui area, and a lot of people come to use it, so the numbers have increased from the pump track, and a lot of numbers have increased as well because of the bowl, which was also extended on for I think $150,000. It's very rare that in New Zealand, in the lower regions, you will find a high quality bowl as such. So that has increased the number of skaters.
Great, thanks, Leo. That's good clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. It doesn't. Oh, sorry, Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Leo. Really appreciate you bringing this to our attention. Just wanted to ask, you put forward some pretty, I suppose, frank safety concerns around the current state there, and acknowledging that it might take some time for a council to respond and even make a decision. And then, if it were to be a decision to build something, it might take some time to implement that. So In your view, are there any measures we should be taking in the shorter term around safety or information or things that could be provided there to make it a safer environment in the meantime?
In my point of view, I feel like there could be more information put out onto about the dangers and safety awareness of the skate park, because we find many instances where people come to the skate park and are uninformed of what would be safe. For example, parents who believe it's safer for them to closely follow their kid right beside them all along the place, or a lot of people come without helmets or just walking on the park. So I feel like there could be more information put out as to what people could do for safety protocols.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Leo. Thanks very much for coming along. We do really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll look to move the petition that we received from Leo, seconded by Councillor Naylor. We'll move into comment. Councillor Naylor. Leo, do you mind moving over here? Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. And thank you, Madam Chair. I think this has been a really great suggestion that Leo's brought forward. I think the skate park has been a huge success in our city, and I think a lot of I hear people talking about it. My own son has used it over the years. He's 22 and he still uses it when he comes up from Wellington. And certainly I had the opportunity to show him this report, and he confirmed his view that it was very accurate in terms of his own experience and the fact that there are, it does attract people from out of the city. I think it's really logical to think that mixing younger children with older children won't be the safest option, and it's logical to think that having a facility that would be more appropriate for younger children would be something that would be worth our consideration. And I'd like to suggest that we do progress this through asking the Chief Executive to investigate options for a children's skate park and to report back to this committee. And I'd like to think that that could be able to be done in time to inform our long-term plan process next year, if there is in terms of any budgets that might need to be considered to be included. So I'd like to move that.
Yep. Have you got that, Sarah? Thank you. I have actually seconded it, so if we can read it out, I'll just wait for Sarah to put it up. Sorry, moving to the Mayor. Yeah, first off, we'll just get comments on what Councillor Naylor has put up, so I'll just wait. She's just about to put it up. That the Chief Executive investigate options for a junior skate park and report back. Yep. So that is the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I think I can recall when the skate park, I reopened it when it was extended and improved around 4 or 5 years ago. I think you would have been there too, Madam Chair. And look, it's really popular. It is, and I was quite amazed at the different age groups there. There was grey-haired people and bald people skating around right to little ones. And maybe wrongly, I thought that the park was being self-policed for younger kids. And at the time, it looked like it was. I must admit, Leo, I haven't had other people come to us with this concern, but you've obviously done some work around it. And it's obviously been an experiment, the self-policing. I suppose when you look at a junior skate park, it's no different to the junior cycle park that we did at the Esplanade, and I suppose the same sort of concept there could possibly work. Not being too flashy, if I think that was the comment made, not a too flashy junior skate park. So look, I'm quite happy to support some exploration into that. I think we'd probably need a little bit more than 40 people interviewed, but it's a start. And I think some of the comments there probably dictate that there is perhaps some stuff that's happening there that's not very safe for younger kids, and maybe that's stopping them from coming along. So I think it's worthy of exploring. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other comments around this? So we've got General Manager that wants to speak.
Trying to take this piece of work, I would like to get some advice from the Manager of Parks and Recreation in terms of the cost associated with this. This would be a new piece of work, and I would imagine we'd actually need to engage some resource to actually complete this. And then I think you'd need to actually put some budget aside for this to be actually undertaken. Have you got some advice on the cost it could be, Kathy?
Councillors, we would need to understand the scope. So when we talk about investigating options, if you're looking at something that would be able to inform the LTP process, then you're looking at an option analysis, something that has got indicative costings associated with it, rules around it, those types of things. There's no way we could get that work completed before you have made deliberations on the draft document, and certainly most probably not before you have concluded your deliberations on the final adoption of the LTP. So there is that issue. The other issue, councillors, is that I can't really provide you an indicative cost if I don't understand the scope at this stage. Certainly we don't have the capacity within the internal staff resources within the constrained budget that you heard about this morning to undertake this work. If councillors were of a mind to ask us to stop some other planning work, then possibly we could use internal resources to do this piece of work, given that I have a staff member who was involved in the last upgrade of the skate park.
I'll just go first off to Councillor Barrett and then to the Mayor. Thanks, Kathy.
Thanks. I could probably hold my question because it was a different line. It sounds like we might have something more pertinent to the point under discussion from the Mayor.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure what the councillor and yourself were actually looking for, but I think this is. I wouldn't think this is bigger than Ben here. This is about informing us as to this committee about what perhaps an indicative placeholder budget might be, some possible venues and or sites, and whether it's going to stick in the LTP. I would have thought it might be, seriously, a couple of days' work. In all seriousness, I didn't think it was going to be that large, so I'm quite surprised that we're pushing it back.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. My thinking on this really is that I guess we really need to just know the extent to which the current skate park facility is actually being used. We need to understand the conflict in terms of age groups actually using that, and that kind of information there is really just to inform the council going forward in terms of what else do we need to do to kind of alleviate that. That's my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, okay, I agree, but yeah, thank you.
So, sorry to comment again. This could be even something we use our people, use the youth council to go and do the survey. It could be a good project for. This is a youth project that we're talking about. I hate to think that we're going to go and invest in some consultant to do this work when we're really after some basic stuff here. Again, I keep coming back. It shouldn't be bigger than Ben here, and I would think that it would be a piece of work that just gave us some steer on what it might look like, if indeed it gets picked up.
Okay, right of reply back to you, Councillor Naylor.
sorry, technology. Just in terms of responding to the question around scope, I agree with the Mayor. I guess my view would have been that it would be something very high level to inform some indicative placeholder budgets for the LTP, at least to be able to inform our decision making so that it doesn't get lost. I think some of the really good initiatives that Council has progressed on have been ones that have come up through the community, and I really appreciate Leo coming and speaking to us today and highlighting this on behalf of himself and young people in our city. So I just wouldn't like to see it lost. I think I'm not suggesting the scope should be in detailed sort of, I don't expect we should be needing to get consultants in. I think it's about doing enough work to be able to inform the decisions that we make in the LTP. So I'd really urge councillors to support this.
So we'll just put indicative options in there, Karen. You happy to change that, amend that to indicative options? And Councillor Hancock wanted to move that it was safety concerns. You happy to put safety concerns in there, Councillor Hancock? Because that's where you were coming from, Councillor Hancock.
I think the safety concerns have been well described by the submitter, and I think that there's common sense.
Okay.
I think we all have, 15-year-olds don't play soccer with 6-year-olds. We don't mix older young people or young adults with young children in many other sorts of sports events. So I don't believe we need an in-depth report exploring the safety issues.
Yeah, we don't know what the report's going to be or anything like that, councillor, so we can't say anything like that because it's an operational issue. So I think we just got the recommendation is there, so we just put the word indicative there, then it's an indicative options, and we leave it at that and see what happens. I think that's what
that was my intention. I was just responding to the suggestion of adding something further into it.
Yeah, great. I think the right of replies had, councillor, so I think we just have to go from there and we'll have to vote on it and we go from there. So we vote on it. Do you want a division or are you happy to vote on it? Okay, we'll vote on it. All those in favour? Are those against? Those against. Thanks everybody. It's passed. Okay, thank you, Leo. Oh, so we'll just move to the first one, which is to receive the petition, which is number 1. All those in favour? Thank you. Right, Robert, we'll move to your report, which is the item number 9, which is on page 29. Thank you, Robert.
Thanks, Madam Chair, councillors. So we will take the report as read, but I'd just like to probably give you a bit of a context around where we've got to and how we started on this journey. Some of you will recall back in July 2018, following public concerns and about certainly lagoon contamination, and it was informed by Horizons Regional Council testing that there were particularly high fecal contamination levels within the lagoon. So the initial testing done by ESR on behalf of Horizons did confirm high levels of general bacteria, but also confirmed that there was human, dog and bird bacteria present in the lagoon. Now, no surprise, I mean, all those sources are readily observable, not only in the lagoon, but also in the upstream catchment. So the test results, although there are numerical ones and they were in attachment, they cannot be used to determine the relative amounts of each. So yes, they confirm they're all present, but they don't tell us, whether or not one is more predominant over the other. However, we did then use E. coli testing, and as many of you be aware, E. coli is a widely used indicator organism for the presence of fecal contamination. Given the bacteria survive relatively short time outside of human or animal organisms. So that was essentially the cost-effective mechanism we chose to see how we could establish what might be the potential sources of contamination, coming into the lagoon. So the assumption was that elevated levels of E. coli were linked fairly strongly with the likelihood that there was contamination, related most likely to human wastewater. So the monitoring program we undertook included some baseline testing in the lagoon to help us identify which of the potential discharges to the lagoon we could concentrate on, but also we've gone up those catchments and looked to see whether we could find contamination with the subcatchment. So essentially monitoring started sort of in late 2019, has really been underway over the last year, interrupted by COVID, but in the last while we've undertaken 4 specific rain event sampling events, and those results are in the report. The sampling's not really very surprising. The results essentially say there's contamination in all of our stormwater networks, although the levels of contamination do vary widely. But not only do they vary widely spatially, they also vary widely for the same sampling location. So, it's become pretty clear that it's actually a very complex picture. So we took a targeted approach to see really if we could find specific problems. If we could identify, that needle in the haystack, as it were. We have a problem with exfiltration or leakage of wastewater from our wastewater network, and that is getting into our stormwater network. However, the variability of all of this testing points us really to a much more complex situation. So while we do believe there's some value in some further sampling, particularly in those locations we found some particularly elevated concentrations of E. coli, pretty much what we're coming to the conclusion is that really the best approach is to look for those of our wastewater pipes that are essentially in poor condition. And those are not only the council or public sewers, but there's likely to be also the similar problems in some of the private laterals. So the report talks about proposals around CCTV and smoke testing of the wastewater network. Both of those things we carry out as part of looking at wastewater renewals across the network. And there are some locations like the Awatea where we do seem to have some spot contamination. So really, we've spent the last couple of years, I suppose, hoping that we might find a number of specific sources of contamination. I think the conclusion is, while there's still a few locations we might want to investigate further, the fact is that we're getting contamination of fecal origin, be it dog or human, probably within our entire stormwater network. So it's just a question of the extent to which that's occurring in any particular catchment. So we've identified a short piece of stormwater pipe which we're going to line this year. But really, long term, this is a network which, like much of the city, requires intensive CCTV and smoke testing and targeted renewals. So over the last 2 financial years, we've spent something like $50,000 on not only consultancy but also sampling and monitoring and testing. So we are not proposing essentially to continue any further work in the current financial year. We don't have the finances. There's no dedicated budget for this program of work. Although we will do some sections of pipe as part of our normal program of CCTV and renewals, but as a dedicated 600 plus hectare investigation area, we will now defer and put this on hold until unless there is additional funding dedicated through the LTP. So I hope that sort of tries to bring things together. It's not a terribly positive story, but I think it's just symptomatic of what we would find across the city from most of our stormwater networks. If we went testing stormwater, you know, there are water quality issues throughout the urban area. So, thank you. Yeah.
Are you happy to take questions?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Great. The Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Robert. Look, I'm not sure if anybody's asked you this before, but what are the birds adding and this contamination increase? Because, I mean, remember the lagoon's been used for recreation for decades, really. And all of a sudden we've got issues there. And it coincides with the increase of the Canadian geese. And they're highly, I believe, really highly, droppings are highly bacterial and kill sheep and other things. Is there any work being done to, is it just all the stormwater, or is it actually the birds that live there?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, the genesis of the work was that initial testing done by Horizons and ESR, and I mean, certainly yes, there is avian, bacteria present in the lagoon. We were really looking to target those contaminants that we thought, may be being discharged to the lagoon. So coming from our network. I mean, the lagoon is essentially a Horizons managed water body. So you could certainly do more testing. I mean, it is very expensive to do the trace testing.
No, I wasn't asking a question about testing. I was just saying.
Well,
are we going to do anything about the geese?
Yeah. Well, the problem is you cannot differentiate between the source of or the origin of the bacteria unless you do the trace testing. So, there are bacteria from all organisms present in the lagoon. Predominantly, we've measured dogs and birds. It could be geese, no doubt. It's probably ducks. It's probably a number of other avian species. So, the reality is we are probably, I mean, we have found elevated E. coli in the stormwater which is discharged to the lagoon. So, and our original, I suppose, hypothesis was that there might be a number of particular sources, but it looks like, the contamination relates to, the rainfall events, the length of antecedent dry weather, which, leads to the accumulation of sediments and contaminants within the road space and within private property. Then there's a rain event, and then that picks up that and flushes that down to the into the lagoon. So there's a whole lot of complex factors which are contributing to the levels of contaminants. So yeah.
And then second question, Madam Chair, and look, if some of this work's going to happen, can we use that new government waters allocation, that 9.4 million that we've been granted? I mean, and I'm aware that you've already got a work program out there. Can some of this work, is some of this work being pulled into that?
We've requested additional funding for CCTV and renewals in the sewer, in the wastewater pipe network, and as well as in stormwater. So we can certainly use that to target some of these networks. I mean, it will do a portion. It'll be still a relatively small contribution to obviously the length of pipe. But I mean, we have been targeting those parts of the network that are in poorest condition. But we could treat this catchment a little bit differently and give it a lower threshold, as it were, and maybe do some more renewals in this catchment. So, yes, that's possible.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Phone, please.
Yeah, and thanks, Robert, for this report. I suppose it does raise a number of questions about water infrastructure in our city and how it's managed. But I guess one of the ones that's front of mind for me is to understand if this is widespread, not just in this particular subcatchment, but throughout the city. Are those other discharge points direct to the river? And is it therefore likely that we're basically discharging a relatively dilute sewage directly to the river.
Yeah, I think it might be a little bit of a long bow to describe this as dilute wastewater. I mean, even if there was no human wastewater, there would still be bacterial contamination in stormwater. I mean, bacteria is present in all soil, it's present on all plants and on all surfaces. So, but fecal bacteria, yes, we will have leakage, or we will have cross-contamination from all parts of our network. I think there are 57 discharge points from stormwater into either the Mangoni or the Manawatu, or via the Haukawhitu Lagoon, for instance. So, yes, I would expect that all of those networks will have contaminant, so as part of their discharge.
Thanks, and thanks for that clarification around distinguishing between E. coli and bacterial contamination in general. So, I guess, are there cases where cities have had infrastructure that has this much cross-contamination that have actually meaningfully resolved that over time? Or is it one of those legacy things that ends up just being the way things are?
Yeah, I probably don't have enough experience of we're probably, yeah, the thing is, as an inland city, all of our stormwater discharges are going to fresh water. So I suppose, many of our coastal cousins, of course, are discharging to ocean environments, and those environments are much less sensitive to the sorts of contaminants. Look, the reality is that all urban areas within, the world are dealing with failing or aging wastewater assets. So, I mean, a lot of our old wastewater networks are comprised of clay tile pipes, and they have joints, and a lot of them are cracked. So, it's typical for wastewater to be leaking from wastewater systems. What we have been looking for is where wastewater pipes are running in parallel or close proximity to stormwater lines, because there's much greater likelihood that wastewater would leak directly into the stormwater pipe. So, those sorts of cross-contamination locations have been some of the places we've been looking to identify. It's just not really clear whether we're finding those. I think we're certainly interested also to look at the private lateral space. I mean, the Awatea, for instance, which has a large number of properties backing onto it, there's some evidence that, there are wastewater discharges quite local to that waterway. But yeah, so.
Thanks. Final question is really just to clarify the forward plan here. So as I understand it, you said sort of parking this work up at least until the 31st, well, the end of this financial year. But the next long-term plan as it's being drafted, would it see further activity to start to resolve this, or is it not there?
Yeah, there are a number of enhanced programs of investment, which are not specific to this catchment, but are for citywide investment increases, particularly in CCTV and also I&I reduction, because these things are all directly linked. I mean, essentially, stormwater getting into the wastewater network is, if that's addressed, we're also looking at wastewater networks which are essentially leaky. So, so by tackling, on multiple fronts, we would hope to start to address this. There is an opportunity maybe to give this special status. We do have a citywide water quality monitoring program, and that is about establishing the water quality in all of our receiving environments, streams and drains. And part of that is for some network monitoring. So, but it specifically, yeah, targeted approach to this catchment that would require possibly a little bit more investment than we're currently planning for. Yeah.
Right, thanks. That's helpful clarification, Madam Chair.
Councillor Petrinas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for the report, Rod. On page 39, I just wanted to confirm that under 7.2, the statements made with the bore water replenishment system, that this will continue to encourage flushing of nutrient and other contaminants So I'm assuming that flushing is occurring into the Manawatu River. Are we monitoring the outlet end of the lagoon into the river as to what is happening there?
I'm not aware that we are, no, but that's possibly a separate program. Kathy, is there any monitoring obligations as part of that consent, the bore water consent? I'm not aware that there is. No, I think it's just on the take, on the amount of water pumped, as it were, and added to the lagoon. So there's no water quality discharge testing.
Thank you.
Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Robert. At some point in the report, you have commented on the state of the wastewater pipes, their condition. How confident you are that the drinking water supply is not in danger due to these leakages? Or
look, we pressurized drinking water supply. So unless there is a backflow risk, which is the risk of water being drawn back into the system through a connection, or we consider the risk to be extremely low. So yeah, there's not what we're describing here is just typically what currently exists in most most reticulated networks in most urban areas. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think that's exhausted the questions. Thank you so much, Robert. Okay, I'll look to move the recommendation. Seconded by Councillor Hancock. Is there any comment on this? Councillor Barrett.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and first to say thanks to the officers for bringing forward a very data-rich picture of what's going on here. I know it's taken some extensive effort to get to the point of now having some very clear bad news to pass on to us. And I do think we need to recognize the sort of scale and complexity of the issue. And I must say, I do find it quite disturbing to realize that there's that much contamination and that it's that generalized. And I think that as a community and as a council representing that community, we'll need to make some significant decisions in the future about how we do respond to this and whether we actually decide it's a problem we're going to tackle or whether we're just going to look away. There's, I think, quite extraordinary ramifications when you think about this on a community-wide basis, our relationship between communities and fresh water in this country, et cetera. So this report in and of itself has been very, very useful in terms of bringing the extent of the challenge to light. And I'll certainly be looking forward to understanding how effective the specific interventions are that have been proposed in terms of the relining of pipes, et cetera, in this specific subcatchment. But again, I think it's the bigger picture that we as a council will need to grapple with.
Thanks, Councillor Barrett. I do think that this report has been a long time coming. It's been sitting on the work schedule probably for about a year and a half. So thank you very much to Robert and the officers for all the work that has been put into this report. It is very much appreciated for all the work that has been done. And it is a very scientific report, and it is very much appreciated, as Councillor Barrett has outlined. And again, it is that we will have to refer back to or further reference in the future. I do think that we do have things that we do have to look to in terms of the animals and the dogs that are disturbing our waterways and are affecting our waterways going forward, and what we do need to do because they are causing a nuisance going forward. Okay, with that, I'll look to vote. All those in favour? Yep, that's Councillor Barrett. Were you in favour? Or did you want to go again? I didn't see you put your hand up, sorry. Okay. So that's unanimous. Thanks everybody for that. Moving on to the committee work schedule, which is on page 119. Have you got anything you want to comment on that? Anybody got anything they want to comment on the work schedule? No, I think we're all pretty clear on the work schedule. Okay, I'll look to move the work schedule, seconded by Councillor Dennison. We'll look to vote. Yep, that's gone through. I saw Councillor Barrett's hand that time. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Janine. Okay, we'll look to move into part 2. So I'll look to move it, seconded by Councillor Dennison. We'll vote on that. Okay, thank you everyone, that's unanimous. We're in part 2 with, we are not recording.